I think we're good. I think we're up and rolling for this evening.
So it looks that way. There we go. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Well, hello, hello, hello out there, all of you in Twitchland. Welcome to the first night of A&M Talk D&D.
Yes.
I'm Ash King,
I'm Michael Cross.
and we are here to talk to you about all things D&D, really.
Yeah.
Tonight we are starting with the latest and greatest, newest thing that has come out of our good, the good folks at Wizards of the Coast, which is
Oh, you got the
the
new one too. I mean, you got the
yes,
bone. Oh, I hadn't seen that one.
yes, I got the special edition cover of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So, this is the newest book to come out of Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons and Dragons. And this, of course, is the setting guide for Ravenloft. Now, for those of you out there who are not familiar with Ravenloft, I pity you.
Yes. Now's a
But
good time to learn.
it's a good time to learn, exactly. So what Ravenloft is that so way back in the day, um, I'm trying to think. It was it the 70s or the 80s that they freed
1983, I think, was the very first
80,
Ravenloft.
83 was the origin
Right.
story of Ravenloft. Yeah, that sounds about right. But way back in the day when they were working on settings for the original Dungeons and Dragons, Ravenloft was one of those that came out, and the idea behind it was basically that these are known as the domains of dread, which the domain of dread is a demiplane based in the Shadowfell, which is the plane of negative energy. It is a shadowy, dark reflection of the prime material plane. And all of the domains of dread are these little, basically pocket dimensions
Mhm.
inside of the Shadowfell. And each domain of dread is ruled over by a Dark Lord. The first demiplane of dread, and where the whole setting Ravenloft gets his name, was Castle Ravenloft and Barovia with Count Strahd von Zarovich.
Mhm.
So he was the first one, the first Dark Lord, the one that kicked off all of this. But there are others. There are many, many, many others, which that's one of the things that this book reintroduces into 5th edition is all of those wonderful demiplanes of dread, which are a lot of the original ones were based off of the original Universal horror monsters.
Right.
So Dracula, the Wolfman, Pinocchio. There's an
Yes.
evil. There's an evil Pinocchio, which is fantastic.
Really disturbing Pinocchio story. There's a Cinderella story in this thing
Mm-hmm.
where she gets a little twisted. Everything else is fine until the ball, and then yeah.
Then it just goes off the rails from there.
It's just it. Connor says that you're a little bit quiet and I'm a little bit loud,
Okay, let me try to fix that as best I can.
and I can actually turn myself down just a little bit if you want to try and turn yourself up a bit.
Yeah, I've gotten my. I'm pretty much as far up as I can go, at
Okay.
least on OBS. And then let me. I can turn you. I can turn Michael down a little more, and we'll see
Yeah,
what
I
happens.
can, and I can also put myself down because I've got it on.
I might just have to get closer to the
Right.
microphone, but can
So,
just.
how would you compare this book to past books? I mean, and one of the beauties of Wizards of the Coast and all the books are everything has its own little thing and it's
Mm-hmm.
cool. How would you compare it to any of the other books, the past?
Well, I mean, so
Not, no, and I know you're a fan of Ravenloft, so take that out of it. Take the fact that you're just
oh,
already a
so we
fan
are
of
we
that.
just talking like
Just as a book, as a just on its own merit.
mm-hmm. So like just comparing it to like the other like 5th edition
Yeah,
books that have come out.
exactly.
So my thoughts and feelings about this one, I definitely feel like there's been a lot of talk around this one and around
Hmm.
Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which came out, last year, that these books are definitely meant to provide a lot of inspiration for the DMs, and especially for newer DMs who might not have been doing this as long, might
Right.
not, kind of that whole, there's some dungeon masters who, we have the confidence and the skill set to create whatever we want and
Right.
take from older editions and take from other sources and other things, and we go ahead and let that inspire our campaigns, while there's other DMs who are still learning that skill set
Hmm.
and maybe need a little more assistance to help them along, in creating those things and getting
Hmm.
that inspiration. And that's kind of my thoughts about this one, is that I feel like, for those players and those dungeon masters who need the permission and need
Hmm.
the inspiration to take their games a little farther and to weave in some different elements and some different genres, like, I really feel that that's one of the strengths of this book, is that it does talk about, like, hey, here's how to run a horror campaign.
Right. Yeah, and it's chock full of inspiration. I dare anybody, player or DM, to read through this book and not be inspired to want to. I would think that this would inspire not only DMs, this would inspire writers. I would love for Wizards of the Coast to go, you know what? They used to put out 5, 6, 7, 8 books of a year. Now, maybe not when they were the Wizards of the Coast, but certainly when they were TSR.
Oh yeah.
I'd love to see every one of these turned into a book of some kind, because that it's just so, I mean, it's so cleverly put together. I it's the best. Well, I really loved Eberron, but I still think it's the best setting
You feel that this
book.
is better, so as a setting book this trumps like Eberron.
Well, the only reason it does, everyone's phenomenal. I think that Keith Baker is incredible. The world that he's created, the book, the Last War was phenomenal. I read that through. Same with this one in 1 week. I had it completely read through
Mm-hmm.
because I was just glued to it.
Mm-hmm.
And Eberron, I read all the way through, loved it, was so inspired by it. Um, and but this one, just because there's so many, whereas Sword Coast is just Faerun and Eberron is just Eberron. This is so many different places that you can go and so many different stories you can tell. Do you tell a story just in one domain? Do you tell stories about some mistwalkers who are going from place to place? You can do.
Hopping around to
Oh,
all the different domains of dread.
yeah. I'd be jealous of the players who get to do that in some DM's campaign, because that is just, it's wonderful. I love the fact that they've done some gender bending. I love the fact that they have done some sexual orientation bending. They are choosing to open the world up to many different people.
I think I
And
remember one of the biggest controversies to come out of the 2014 Curse of Strahd book was the fact that Strahd was bi.
yeah, I remember when there are characters, there's some
Hi,
NPCs.
Sugar Pies. Welcome to the stream.
Oh, sugar pies. And we've got the also in Watership Down
Watership
in
Down.
Waterdeep.
Hey, that's a whole other
Yeah, totally different.
RPG there, man. Now we're
That's with
talking
the
bunnies and
bunnies.
burrows.
There's a dog loose in the woods. But with Waterdeep, there's some NPCs where you've got some male characters who are married. And that was the first time
Oh,
I realized,
the Genasi couple in
yes,
Troll Skull Alley, the fire and water, and just
yeah.
that was so cute.
And so that was when I started to realize, okay, finally, Wizards of the Coast is waking up to the fact that there are other people on this planet, and they're not always homogeneous. They're not all straight. There are different people in the world, and this gives the people something to do. There's the one that is based off of uh, the Dr. Frankenstein, where they've actually made Dr. Frankenstein a female,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't change her love partner's sex, so she is still a she. And you've got the love interest between the Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and they got married. I was reading this, and I'm like, and that's when they got married. And I'm like, oh, that's so wonderful.
If I say if the BBC is too scared to do it, Wizards of the Coast is
Wizards of
not.
the Coast will do it.
No, there's been. I mean, I know. Just because of. Especially if you follow like Jeremy Crawford's Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Wizards of the Coast over the past. I would say probably the past 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Has really been pushing and has been recognizing that the community that is playing D&D now is so diverse, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different people who are playing D&D. There's different gender makeups. It's not all just the stereotypical male nerd in his mom's
Right.
basement. Or the group of guys at the game store playing D&D anymore. No, no,
Right.
no, no, no. A lot of their players are female, or are women, or are gender
Mm-hmm.
non-conforming, or they're not all straight.
No, I think the audience, the queer audience, has grown a lot, and which makes sense because I think the idea of fantasy makes sense, and this is play acting. This is and so I understand it, and I think I do also understand that there might have been some trepidation at Wizards of the Coast to open up to that, because then you've got your people who would be against that kind of thing. But I think they did it the right way and just kind of went, this is how we're doing it. And of course, what I've always said, if you don't like it, stop playing the game. It's not going to bother me at all, because
Goodbye.
there's already this wonderful audience, and especially if you see the new podcasts that are out there, either not just podcasts, but out on YouTube, out all over the place on Twitch, of several different people, straight, gay. I love the fact that we have got so much going on. What did they recently alerted that?
Yes, sugar pies. Gatekeepers suck.
Yes,
Gatekeepers suck
yes.
so much. And I think recently there was a tweet a couple weeks ago that was just like, "Hey, what's the opposite of a gatekeeper?" And of course, the answer that like I like to give is a Pied Piper.
Yeah.
Because a gatekeepers are the ones who they're watching the gate, they're trying to keep people out, but Pied Pipers are the ones who are playing the flute and leading everyone
Yes.
into their interests.
Yeah.
So yes, don't be a gatekeeper, be a Pied Piper.
Right. And recently announcing that Jarlaxle is pansexual. There's been so much stuff going on, and it's
as a pansexual myself, I screamed when Jeremy Crawford finally used the word.
Yeah.
I screamed like, because it is a big deal to see yourself somewhere and to have, because like that's the thing, is that Jarlaxle was that way the entire time.
Sure.
We're talking about a guy who seduced and slept with 2 dragons.
That's right.
Like, excuse me. Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
And I think I actually saw a tweet not too long ago, and it was like R.A. Salvador's son, who was talking about, because, you know, there's people out there who headcanon about, like, Jarlaxle and Artemis, about their relationship, and he was like, yeah, sure, why not? The guy,
Yeah.
like, we've got one of them who, you know, goes after dragons, and the other one, you know, it's like, it's all fantasy, man. Like,
Yeah, it is. It is. It's fantasy and it's beautiful. You know, Northern Oki talks about the variations of Tatiana. Uh,
oh,
you could really with Tatiana you could make Tatiana male, female, anything you
I'm,
wanted.
I think, no, I was reading through here, the other night, and there was the Tatiana chart, and literally it was like a 50-50 split of, like,
Hmm.
men, women, different races. Like, one of them was a dragonborn.
Hmm.
Um, I've always, I mean, I'm somewhat, I have a headcanon in my head. Yes, there's a chart for that. Literally, that is one of the good things that I can tell you, that I can say about this book, Northern Oki, is that there are so many good charts
Yeah. Oh.
in this book. Like, I was reading through it a little more last night. I'm not as quick as Mike. I have to sit there and digest. But I was going through it, and there's so, like, the charts in this are
Hmm.
just A plus, just A plus in this book.
Yeah.
If you can think about it, there's a chart for it.
Yeah.
But no, and, like, just reading through the different options about, like, Tatiana and the different inspirations for Tatiana, were really, like, they were really nice.
Yeah.
Because that's, of course, you know, Strahd's story is his hunt, his constant cycle of, you know, I'm constantly trying to get this woman's soul.
Hmm.
You know, his jealousy about Tatiana. But I'm gonna come out and just say that my personal Curse of Strahd, when I'm writing it, is that Tatiana is currently embodied in Irina Kolyana, but Irina Kolyana becomes her own hero
Hmm.
and decides that she ain't gonna take it, and she and Ez Danavir
Hmm.
team up to take him down, and then my favorite phrase, they fall in lesbians and ride off into
They
the
fall in
sunset.
lesbians.
They fall in lesbians and then ride off into the sunrise together, and that's how my personal Curse of Strahd ends. Like, I don't
Yeah.
care. Like, that's how it ends for me. Like, I don't know about you, but
We're going to go over the next few weeks to talk about this. And we're going to start, we're just going to go through each chapter. By the time we get to chapter 3, we might have to break it down into just maybe 2 or 3 of these because each one of these domains is phenomenal. You do mention the fact that there are many charts, there are few stats outside of the monsters that are given the end. There are few stats. And I love that because it says I think from the one that always Octopod from Harakir is they say he's a mummy lord.
mm-hmm.
So you've got the stats for a mummy lord.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to buff it up anymore.
I mean,
For a
you could, if you really wanted to add some, like, you know, some fresh flavor to
right.
it. Sugar Pies DM me about that, because that sounds amazing. They played in a Curse of Strahd game where the DM made Strahd female.
Oh.
Well, see, no,
Oh.
that's my thing. Okay, like, that's my thing. I want to, I think the domain of dread that I want to work on is gonna feature Carmilla.
Mm.
Carmilla, for those of you out there who are not familiar, before Bram Stoker wrote Dracula, there was another author. I can't remember the name of the author, but the story was about Carmilla, who was a lesbian vampire,
Huh.
and literally, kid you not, she was, like, seducing, like, a nobleman's daughter, and, like, it's a whole thing. And that's something like that grinds my gears because there's never been a good adaptation of Carmilla. There's been 5 million adaptations of Dracula, but not a good one of Carmilla. But that's gonna be my domain of dread. I'm gonna work on that, where my Dark Lord is gonna be Carmilla.
That'll be good. So we're going to go through each one. Let's start with chapter 1, which I would say is only chapter that actually is made for the players.
Yes.
Players, if you're going to want to play in the Domains of Dread, you should probably not read the rest of this book. Because actually you can. Please do, because actually the truth is really, especially I would say definitely read chapter 2 as a player, because, and also chapter 4 maybe also, because this way you get an idea of where your DM's coming from. Because, and I've got to say right off the bat, I also don't think, folks, take this book. You do not have to run a horror campaign or a horror game to use a majority of the suggestions in this book, because although you're not, maybe you're playing, you're playing against, I was going to say against the Giants, Storm King's Thunder, which isn't technically a horror, but your characters should still be frightened. They should still be concerned for their lives. There should be some really freaky things going on, because that's the worlds we live in. And that's the beauty of D&D. So take a lot of these things, even if you're not going to do a horror, definitely take a lot of these ideas into any campaign that you're doing, because there's a lot of things you can do with it. There's a lot of things that are very specific to running a horror campaign in this, but I think there are a lot of things that you can still do. The most important part of this, before we get started with anything, make sure you have a session 0. Make sure you talk to your players, because I can guarantee you much of this stuff, for example, my wife would not be interested in at all. In fact, she would walk away from the table. Yes. So you have to be aware of your players. When we're talking, as you know, we talk about opening up to audiences, we still have to be aware of anything our audiences will be uncomfortable with. Know your audience very well, know your table.
Definitely. That's one of the things that I noticed, and like one of the first things I kind of put in my notes as I was reading through even just the first couple chapters of Van Richten's, is that there is a huge emphasis on consent and on the comfort of players, which that's something that is incredibly important for a horror campaign, but also incredibly important for any sort of campaign. Your players need to be comfortable coming to you as a DM if you are DMing, or if you're in a gaming group, your fellow players need to be comfortable about speaking up for themselves, and be comfortable about, speaking up and saying, hey, this isn't okay. This is making me uncomfortable. Right. And a good session 0 allows you to really set those expectations and set those limits, and have, those frank discussions about, your DM should, in a session 0, present to you, this is the campaign I want to run. These are the themes that I'm planning to hit. Mm-hmm. Is everybody okay with this?
Right.
And, that's the player's opportunity to say yes or no. But yeah, you shouldn't be surprising your players with things specifically to make them uncomfortable.
Right. You should be surprising your characters.
Yeah. And that's a big topic that I've noticed just reading through, again, the first couple chapters of this book, that they have definitely put a big emphasis on. And I will also say that if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely check out Monty Cook's Consent in Gaming. That is a invaluable resource. Yes, sugar pies. Yes, always check in. Like, because there are players out there who are not always comfortable speaking up, but you can tell that they are uncomfortable about something.
I am going to put this in our chat box. I'm
Yes.
copying and pasting right now in chat.
But yes, if you haven't checked out the Monty Cook's Consent in Gaming, it's a free PDF from the publisher Monty Cook. They are a great gaming publisher. They publish so many different other RPGs, so definitely check out their library. But that particular document talks about ways to ensure that your players are comfortable and tools that you can use to give your players a voice to speak up, even if they might not be comfortable speaking up in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it gets to chapter 4, it also talks about, it's okay at the end of a session to say, okay, is everyone doing okay? How do you feel about where we're going? Because this is, as I mentioned right in the very beginning, this is supposed to be scary for the characters. It's supposed to be fun for the players. If it ceases to be fun for the players, it's no longer a game. And we don't want that to happen. We want people to come back and come back and come back, not just for the horror, but also just adventuring as it is. I have made more friends in the past 4 years of joining 5th edition than I had in my entire adult life, and it's because of this game. So we are about making sure that we are including everybody, and that includes people who have a little bit of a problem with horror. So we have to make sure, because although, like I said, there's a lot of things that my wife would not enjoy in here, but we still sit and watch Stranger Things. We still watch other kinds of what would be considered horror. So you can find things in here that would work. Again, it's about scaring the characters, not scaring the players. But there's...
Yeah, establishing limits, basically. Yeah. That's really what it is. Love you, sugar pies. But yeah, that's one of the things a good session 0 does, is that it helps you to establish the limits with your players, to figure out where everybody's comfort level is. Mm-hmm. And especially if you're using the consent checklist from Consent in Gaming, which I love that checklist, not gonna lie, it is great. We used it for Red Dirt D&D, even though, Red Dirt really doesn't veer into the realm of, horror or whatever. But in any setting, in any campaign, there can be uncomfortable topics that, can potentially come up. So it's good to establish limits early and know, okay, it's okay to bring up religion in this context.
Right.
It's okay to bring up, sexuality in this type of context. Mm-hmm. So you definitely...
my Saturday night group... My Saturday night group, we'd been playing for a year and a half under my son as a DM, and then I took over and ran through a Greyhawk campaign. I still had a session 0 with them. We'd been playing for a year and a half. It was a shortened session 0. Well, so shortened, it still took us 4 hours, but it wasn't quite as in depth, because we all knew each other, and we knew we were comfortable talking to each other. But it's still very important. You still have to do it, because it's going to be a brand new setting, a brand new world, and you just want to make sure your players are comfortable.
Yep.
So.
And then also, session 0s, they're not just for, they can also be used for setting up your player characters.
Yes.
And allowing your player characters your players moments to make connections between their characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is not a greater gift to a DM than when your players start from a place of interconnectedness.
Yeah.
Between their characters.
Yeah.
So, yes, session 0s, fantastic. We love them. That may
Very
be something
important.
We might have to talk a little more in depth about later on, just how to create a good session 0.
Good session 0, yeah.
There is an art form
and
to it.
Not just about, but you're right, not just about consent, but to also introduce the players to the world you're going to play in, because they need to know, especially if you want a good backstory. you better introduce them to the world, because it's hard to make a backstory if I don't know what world I'm playing in.
Exactly.
And especially when you look at Van Richten's guide, are you going to play in Darkon, or are you going to play in Barovia only, or are you going to be a Mist Hunter? Are you going to Mist Traveler? What are you going to do? Are you going to include dark gifts? Are you going to include? So let's talk
the
about
new dark gifts.
let's first off, okay, let's talk about lineages. We'll go down the list. So we're starting with chapter 1. We've got 3 new lineages, which are not races nor are they species. They were already born into whatever species you want to choose for them. They were changed in some way. You have the Dhampir, who is technically vampire light. Is that what how would you put a Dhampir?
Dhampir. Dhampir are traditionally were basically like the offspring of a human and a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking like, I mean, like the most iconic example is like Vampire Hunter D. He's a Dhampir, where and it's literally a vampire and a human had a child together.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, since it's D&D, a Dhampir can basically be anything.
Right.
And their interpretation of the Dhampir is more basically more or less like they are. You can definitely tell it's definitely inspired by like vampire, the vampire hybrid kind of thing. But you don't necessarily have to play it just strictly as if you were like straight up like a vampire,
right?
Because it allows you to have it really focuses on that kind of that inner beast and that inner hunger that is a big part of vampire myth and vampire lore, is that vampires are it's all about that hunger, about never being satisfied. But yeah, so the Dhampir is basically, something happened and you have this vampiric lineage.
Right. The Hex Blood. So explain what the Hex Blood is.
So the Hex Bloods are basically, they are individuals who have been influenced by hags. So the hags in D&D are, a group of monsters that are these monstrous witch women. So kind of think like Baba Yaga, like technically like Baba Yaga.
I always do.
never not think of Baba Yaga.
That's right.
But yes, they are kind of like their origin table focuses more on because it's always like a hag somehow influenced you, whether that was like and I kind of was thinking about it like you could play it basically play it kind of like Rapunzel, or like a traditional fairy tale heroine that was born in an unusual way because her parents had to go to the fairies or to the old witch in the woods because they were desperate for a child type thing.
Right.
And that's basically what a Hex Blood is. So, and I'm not gonna lie, I've got a lot of inspiration for some different like Hex Blood characters.
I can believe that. I really loved the Reborn. It took me a while to figure out what the Reborn were, but basically the Reborn are your Frankenstein's monster. You could also be a ghost. You could be a spirit. There could be a lot of reasons why you're reborn. But my first thought was that you have been brought back to life, and in sometimes not so pleasant ways. You could really use every one of these. I think we always like our characters to have some kind of flaw, but these really build in the flaw so well. That you would not almost be able to survive outside of the domains of dread. It's the only place where you would truly be accepted as one of these 3
Yes,
lineages.
I mean, yeah, the lineages that are in here, I mean, again, are definitely very much built for some type of horror campaign in some way, shape, or form, or even just like a gothic campaign.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm very I'm very pleased with the way that they handle the lineages, because you can do it. It's a choice of, you can build a character just based off the lineage and just
Right.
go with whatever the lineage has, or you can pick a base race.
Right. Yeah.
Whether that's a human, an elf, a dwarf, an orc, whatever base you want to pick, and then you put this lineage on top of it,
Mm-hmm.
which I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that that's probably what we'll continue to see going forward,
Mm-hmm.
if new quote unquote races are introduced.
Yeah.
So I like the lineage. I like lineages a lot better than I like the concept of just straight up like races.
Right.
Because that's
Well, and of
actually
course,
how.
it's well, I was gonna say it is also very much like what Tasha did, which basically said it's open. You might be an elf, but you've got some dwarven traits in you because maybe you were raised by dwarves. And again, one of the reasons why I love Tasha so much, but I think Tasha's is much more of a player driven than this is. But
Oh, definitely.
it's still the idea that you can do anything you want. 5e has really opened itself up now to just, you can play anything you want. There's some rules that you play by. We all play by these rules, but they're open up to a lot more interpretation than they used to be, and that's fantastic. The more we can do that, it also not only maybe pulls us away from just fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
that you could take 5e. Well, obviously, look at Red Dead D&D. We're a Wild West fantasy. You can do anything you want.
We're weird. We are Weird West, baby.
Oh yeah, we don't get any weirder than us.
Nope. Ooh, and I'm not gonna lie, there is one like little domain of dread in here that I saw that I'm like, oh no, that would be perfect for Red Dirt.
Oh my gosh, somebody guess what that one is. There's a few in here actually I thought it would be fan, because you were talking about you just open up the mists and you could do anything you wanted to. A lot of these are very steampunky, which is I love. I'm a huge fan of steampunk, and
Yes.
I always thought of Red Dead D&D. We are kind of steampunky, although we're out in the West. I think of Venturas as very steampunky.
And actually, so there actually is a subset. There's a subset of steampunk called dustpunk.
I've not heard of this one.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to talk more about it later. But there is a subset of steampunk known as dustpunk, which basically, because technically, the quote unquote Wild West was happening at the same time as Victorian England.
Yeah.
So you can have your peanut butter and your chocolate.
Yes.
But
okay, so dark gifts.
Dark gifts. Dark gifts. Oh my
this
gosh.
Is an amazing, and what I love the most about dark gifts is that you don't have to start out with one.
Mm-mm.
And as a DM, you could go, you have to make this deal with this hag, or you have to open and read this Necronomicon, and all of a sudden you've got one of these dark gifts, which are phenomenal. Talk about these.
So good.
Do you have a favorite?
So good. I love them all.
I know.
I love them
I know.
all.
You could have so much fun with every. I want to play character with every one of them.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things. So like, in season 4 of Adventurers League, they really like played with the dark gifts. There was a whole table of,
which was the Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, the Curse of Strahd campaign, was a whole table of dark gifts, and basically what it was that if you died, you could make a deal with the dark powers to come back, but you had to take one of these dark gifts, or you the spellcasting services that season were provided by the green hag Jenny Greenteeth, who,
yes,
Everybody loves Jenny Greenteeth. Like, if you don't like Jenny Greenteeth, I don't even want to talk to you.
My first experience in playing D&D, I went to battle with her. It was fabulous. I
She's
shot
great.
magic missiles at her. It was fantastic.
Love her so much. But yeah, so, and it was like, if you didn't have enough money to pay Jenny Greenteeth, you could take a dark gift.
Mm.
So to see the dark gifts go from that, which were very simple, kind of one sentence, like, descriptions of a thing,
Mm-hmm.
to what's in here, which is a fully fleshed out system with, a whole lot of really cool powers, has been just mwah,
Yeah.
mwah. Like, they got so much better. Like, they are so much better, so much more fantastic.
Yeah, and you could sometimes it could be a good thing, sometimes it could be a bad thing.
Well,
It just
it's one of those
kind of
things.
depends.
Like, each of the dark gifts has, it has positive. Well, I'm not gonna say positive. It has powers associated with
Right.
it, useful powers that are associated with it. But each gift also has a drawback
Yeah.
that can come into play and affect your character in different ways. So again, like I said, I really love the new dark gifts. I love the whole system that has been created around dark gifts, and I want to see more.
Yeah.
I think
And also,
there's 5
do
or
you
6 here,
yeah,
but I want
let's see,
more.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8. Okay.
Which means now also technically, if you wanted to just be a DM and go completely random, just roll a D8 and give that one to him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think? Because I'm actually thinking, do you think the dark gifts would translate outside of a horror or outside of a domain of dread story?
My thing about the dark gifts is that you could translate them into, you could divorce them from the domain of dread.
Like for example, Avernus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you could potentially have it work in a different setting. Basically, you would just have to come up with, who's the who's the dark power that's giving you this gift.
Right.
So I would say that it's definitely adaptable to if you wanted to take it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely something that you can use to build upon. Because I know in Avernus, there's actually a whole, if you read the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, that actually has a whole appendix on making deals with devils.
Right.
So you could potentially use it to be like, yeah, so you made a deal with the devil, and here's what you get for that.
Right. And here's your thing. Yeah. Which again, I love it because it just gives another added flaw to your character. Not a flaw that is so debilitating that you can't play and win and do a great job and be a hero. It's just a flaw that you have to be aware of that is going to affect who the character is and how the character goes throughout the world. I love it. My favorite, I think, was the Living Shadow, where it's off doing its own thing.
I think my whole thing was so I have a character that I've played for a while, and basically the concept is it's a pair of twins, but they share one body.
Oh yeah.
And it basically the story was like something happened to one twin's body, so her soul got stuck into the male twin's body. And so now they are one entity that the two personalities flip-flop every so often. And there is a dark gift that
the symbiotic being.
The symbiotic being soul echo.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the echoing soul, yes.
But yeah, so there's that's one of the things I loved was I've always tried to find good ways to play that character. I played around with multi-classing one time. So it's one of those things that I love, I love little things like this that allow me to think about, how to handle that in a different way.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. We want to go on to besides three uh, race lineages, we've got two subclasses.
Mm-hmm.
We have the Bard College of, again, that's why I say this is not a player's book. If this were a player's book, they would not only have just two subclasses.
There would be so many more, so many
Yeah,
new
look
subclass
at
options that it
Tasha's.
wouldn't even be funny.
Yeah, look at Tasha's. Look at
Tasha's is for the
Xanathar's.
players. This is for the
Yeah,
DMs.
yeah.
This is
But they
DM
do give
candy.
some. They do show throw some things to the players. I love the College of Spirits. The Warlock of the Undead. It kind of surprised me because there's already a Warlock of the Undying.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering because I think I need to double check, but I was trying to remember if this was the same, like literally the same. Well, I say this, and then I can roll right over here.
I was gonna say I could pull that. I mean, the Undying is Xanathar's.
Well, it actually
Or
first
is it Sword Coast?
It first appeared in Sword Coast.
Yeah, which is the first setting book they did.
Not to like hard
one,
flex on you, Michael.
I really tried to read. I have not read all the way through that one because I started when Xanathar came out, and so
This
so
was like this was the first first book that had any sort of new options for players, so
right.
It was definitely okay. So let's compare here. So the Undying. Okay, yeah, it is different. It is.
Yeah, I
different
figured
from
it
the
was.
Yeah, but and it's interesting.
Well, because that was when they were talking about the Undying.
Yeah.
That it was you could don't they actually mention? Oh, maybe they don't. Oh, no, that's the Archfey. Let me get to it. Mm-hmm. The Undying. Isn't Strahd actually
similar,
mentioned as one
different.
of them?
No, no. The
I guess
the
not.
ones that are mentioned. So the ones that are mentioned in the Undying as being basically being like inspirations would be Vecna, Illa's the Lich Queen, Vol, the Undying Court of Arenal, Vakalith, Lich Queen of Githyanki, and the Deathless Wizard.
Ayus, yeah, all these, but even the Liches basically are undead, and so yeah, so it's like okay, I love the fact they give it Warlock another option. It's just only recently I've just fallen in love with Warlocks. So
Warlocks are great, man.
Just giving them more options is fantastic.
Always give Warlocks new options. Like especially, I mean, I hate to say it, but especially when you're doing a more of a horror themed campaign, like give the Warlocks all of the love. They need more options.
Yeah. And the bards I think is fantastic. The College of Spirits I think is so much fun.
I love the concept behind the College of Spirits because I have been trying to figure out how to play like that.
Yeah.
Because I actually had a bard way back in the day when Curse of Strahd first came out, and that was one of the things I wanted to do with that bard was to have them like run seances.
Yeah.
I actually had them doing a seance in the Death House. Didn't work out for me as well as I would have hoped, but it's a fun concept to play around with, and I think especially if you look into the history of spiritualism and of the whole like the people who did seances and all that, it's a very bard thing.
Yeah.
So the College of Spirits, I am A+.
I think they've done a great job. They put basically their best two out here for this. So I'm very excited. I love the new backgrounds. Of course, the Haunted One comes, I think, originally from Strahd.
I believe they both. I know that the Haunted
Investigator
was done, and I think the Investigator might as well.
Yeah.
But I feel like they definitely expanded on it a little bit.
Yes, very much so. I think because because I've been looking into Investigator for maybe one of my characters that's coming up. Yeah. So,
Jeez, Michael, what could that be?
yeah. So, I love what they've done with the investigator. I love the fact that they have really pulled this out a lot more. I love the new horror characteristics. Throw out your bland old Faerun personality traits and ideals and flaws. No, do this because they're phenomenal.
Yeah, no,
And
I love that. Well, one of the things that I actually thought was really good about the backgrounds was because that's one of the things that they've kind of been pushing forward with the backgrounds as well, is that you can mix and match with your
yeah,
background. Even back in the original player's handbook, you can basically pick a background feature, which is what they put in here. So they have new background features which you can use as to build the start of your background.
mm-hmm.
And then take its if you look at the player's handbook, it's at the very, I think it's at like the very beginning of where it talks about picking your backgrounds, where you actually you have the choice where you can take like 2 tools and 2 languages, or a certain number of proficiencies and a certain number of languages.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some different options, and then what you can do is then go pick a back. You just have to pick a background feature,
Right.
and that's, like the spy, the criminal contact. The criminal contact is the background
That's the
feature.
feature, right?
Mm-hmm. And so
And
that's
then
what they've done. That's what they've done here, where they
the
have background
traveler, and
features
yeah,
for Inheritor, Mistwalker, Spirit Medium, Trauma Survivor, and Traveler. So those are new features that you can pick from to then go in and build up your background. Baldur's Gate did something very similar,
mm-hmm.
where it has alternative background features
Right,
based around Baldur's Gate. So
yeah,
love it. I love that they're continuing to do that, because that's something that I've started doing. I don't pick the cookie cutter backgrounds anymore.
yeah,
I pick the feature that I want, and then I go in and pick, do I want my character to be a skill monkey and have a whole bunch
right.
of skills, or do I want my character to speak a bunch of different languages? So that's something I really like, and I really like seeing that they're playing with that a lot more than just giving you the pre-packaged
Yeah,
backgrounds.
and I love but I love the personality the characteristics,
Yes.
which include your personality traits, your ideals, your bonds, and your flaws. Which again, cookie cutter in players, you've only got so much space, and so each of your backgrounds has 6 random that you can choose from or roll. Uh, I love these. I think they're more in depth. I think that the fact that you can go in and kind of pick and choose the one that works best for you, because yeah, I mean, if you're just not really going well, if you're already rolling in Xanathars, it's my life chapter anyway. You're kind of doing random. It'll
Again,
help you.
another great thing
Yes,
that
it'll
Wizards
help you
did.
grow your character because if you roll on Xanathars, I did that the other night. My son and I had made our characters. We didn't really know what to do with it, so I just started rolling on it. So did he. He started rolling for his character. I started rolling mine. By the time we got halfway through, we're like, "Oh, I know where this character's going. I know exactly where this character's going."
Right.
And I think so. If you want to roll on these, it's great. The flaws are so good. Yeah, and so well. I think it comes with Wizards of the Coast finally going. We could really take this into the deep end, and we can really add. People don't want to play boring little characters. They want characters, and I think it's also because you've got so many podcasts like ours. You've got so many stories like the Dungeon Masters Dojo and other groups that are saying, "Look, flawed characters are good characters." Now, you still want to try to be a hero. You still want to try and be the best you possibly can, but you're gonna have flaws. Gideon's an alcoholic. I mean, you've got to have flaws. You've got to have problems because that's what makes us human. And I think these new flaws, the new ideals, the new personalities, it just adds so much to your character. And are you going to look forward as a DM to seeing some of these?
I mean, definitely. Like, I am kind of plotting in the back of my mind, like, to run a new type of, either run a new Ravenloft campaign or just run something that's kind of different and out of the ordinary. Because my girlfriend and I, she's definitely a huge horror fan. Me, I'm a huge fan of certain types of horror.
Yeah.
Let me just put it that way. But yeah, like the both of us, we love a lot of what this book has to offer
Mm-hmm.
is basically like right in our wheelhouse. So I would love at some point to run a much a darker campaign, and where all of this type of content can really shine. So we've got about 5 minutes left before we wrap up this stream for the evening.
Yeah, and the only thing we had left was horror trinkets. Was there
Yeah.
anything you want to talk about horror trinkets?
um, I don't think we necessarily need to talk about horror
No,
trinkets.
they're
Because
cute.
I really do think that this, I'm not sure, I haven't checked, but I believe this trinket table was just lifted straight from Curse of Strahd as well.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, because Curse of Strahd had a horror trinket table as well. I mean, obviously, I hope that like it's a new trinket table, but I think like trinket tables are so underused.
Yeah, because most players even forget they. I was like, oh, I've got a ring. I'm
Yeah,
I'm
and because
13th
there's
level. And I just realized I have like my half orc had a nobleman's because he was a noble background. He had a ring, and I'm like, I've got a ring. I totally forgot I got that.
No, that was my favorite thing when I was playing. I was playing a Waterdeep campaign, and I was playing a tiefling, but she was a noble child, and like the backstory came up was that like her parents kept like each one blamed the other, was like, well, your family was the one who made the deal with the devil that led to us having a tiefling baby. But no, and basically she just ran around Waterdeep, just like, she's like, yeah, I'm part of the Tallmost family. And like she had to like flash the Singed ring to like prove it, because
Yeah,
like
proof she was noble.
she's a tiefling in a family of humans. But yeah, but no, it's one of those things, like it can definitely it definitely builds character
Mm-hmm.
to have yes, Basse. Yeah, Sugar Pies. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Treasure. That's literally her name, is Treasure. Well, that's the name. That's her pseudonym. Her actual name is like Teresa Maria Alessa.
Just a
Yes,
big noble name.
big noble name, but she calls herself Treasure because she's a treasure, rare and wonderful.
That's
Um,
fabulous.
the last thing, kind of the last thing that I want to point out and kind of just talk about before we wrapped up. So if you look into the history of why Ravenloft exists, so Ravenloft really was the first narrative story when it came down to D&D. The original authors were very much inspired by, like, they were looking at, a random table for a D&D game, and like, what's this random vampire doing here? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why is this vampire here? And for them to come up with Castle Ravenloft was their answer to why is the vampire here.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that as you're reading through this book and as you are thinking about your own domains of dread, it's not just, throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what fits.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building a story. And you want to build a story that your players and that their characters can inhabit. So as Michael and I continue this conversation, we're going to be doing this each week, 6 o'clock here on Twitch. Come join us, come hang out in the chat, and we'll talk about different aspects of Van Richten's. And then when we're done with Van Richten's, the sky is the limit.
Yeah.
Because between the two of us, we have so much D&D experience, and we have so many things that we want to talk to you guys about, and to share our opinions, and to get your opinions. So come hang out with us,
Mm-hmm.
about an hour each week, 6 o'clock, Tuesday nights. And I think that's all I got.
That works for me.
Anything else you want to add, Michael?
No, just go tell your friends, let them know Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. We'll be able to talk, and we'll be able to, the more people we get, the more we can talk to everybody. And thank great session one. And so the more people we get, the more people we can do this, because we're going to be doing more things on the Twitch. I've heard that Johnny and Brooke might be thinking about doing something. We do know on the 16th, and I'm going to say that, and I've got to make sure that's right. The 16th.
June 16th is our next live episode.
19th. June 19th.
19th? Oh, yes.
June 19th.
Saturday the 19th.
Will be our next live event, where everyone's favorite halfling will be running us through another holiday episode and another holiday session. So we'll make that our midsummer session. Join us on June 19th. Let your friends know we're doing this, because the more people we get out here, the more fun we're going to have. And it's just going to be, I think it's just a great fun to get everybody just talking D&D, because the more people we can get playing this game, the more fun it's going to be for everybody.
All right. Well, once again, I am Ash King.
I'm Michael Cross.
And we are two of the crazy people behind Red Dirt D&D. We will be signing off for the evening. See you next time.
See you guys.